Welcome to Special Registration Deputy Training. This training is mandatory in order to become deputized in helping assist voters get registered on behalf of the City of Beloit. This training will take about 30 minutes to complete. A special thanks goes to the City of Madison Clerk, Maribeth Witzel, for providing the assistance and helping me provide this training for you today.
Special Registration Deputy Training is regulated by state statute. Deputies must be deputized every 2 years and complete training every 2 years. So once you're appointed, you will expire in the December of the even-numbered years. So if you in 2015 were deputized, you would expire in December of 2016. So keep that in mind. You also cannot be paid per registration form. So if somebody has hired you with that intent, you cannot be paid per registration form. Our requirements in the City of Beloit are that the forms you return to us are completely legible. We want the voters' names to be spelled correctly on the poll books. You can return the forms by mail or in person to us at the City Hall. We require you to return the forms to us within 3 days of registering the voter. This allows us to efficiently process the registration forms. A helpful website for you and for the voter that you're working with is called MyVote. It's administered by the Government Accountability Board. This is a statewide site that pulls information directly from the statewide voter registration system. This site can provide information about a voter's registration history, so if they can't remember whether or not they've registered, this is a good place to start. The voter can also view their polling place information simply by entering an address. This feature can assist you, the SRD, if you aren't sure which jurisdiction the voter lives in. You can also receive information about obtaining an absentee ballot, view sample ballots, and be put in contact with your elected officials. myvote.wi.gov is an amazing tool to properly assist voters and can be accessed on any mobile device or computer. You might even likely start to see voter registration taking place at the polls via this site on computers in the near future. In the City Clerk's office, our goal is to make sure that all eligible voters are able to cast a ballot and have that ballot counted. As a special registration deputy, you're helping us meet that goal by making sure people get registered to vote early. If we receive completed and legible registrations, complete with proof of residence information, we can verify the voters and their residence and have them show up on the poll book on Election Day. This helps the flow so we can all have a positive voting experience.
Let's review the qualifications for voter eligibility. In order to be able to vote, you must be a U.S. citizen, at least 18 years old by Election Day, a resident of the City of Beloit for 28 consecutive days before the election, and if convicted of a felony, have completed the terms of the sentence, including probation and parole. The Wisconsin Constitution indicates that a person convicted of a felony cannot vote in any election unless the person is restored to civil rights, which is sometimes referred to as off paper. Restoration of civil rights occurs when an offender has been discharged from supervision. Therefore, felony offenders cannot vote while they are under supervision to the Department of Corrections. In order to be a special registration deputy, you must also meet the requirements of a qualified elector, although you may become an SRD in multiple jurisdictions. And a quick side note, certifying voter eligibility is up to the voter, not the SRD. If the voter certifies to the above qualifications and is found to have falsified their registration, it is the voter who will be held accountable.
When figuring out whether you've been at an address for 28 days in order to establish residency, you do not need to take any weekends away from Beloit into consideration. Any temporary absence from your place of residence does not affect your eligibility to register and vote. There are also sometimes a bit of confusion for college students in August elections to figure out their residency. For most college students, they will not have been at their current Beloit address long enough to establish residency for an August election. If they had lived in Beloit previously and were registered previously for the last semester and intend to return to Beloit in the fall, they can remain registered at the previous Beloit address. It's all based on the intent to return. All voters are now required to show proof of address or residence when registering to vote, regardless of when or where they register or whether or not they register with a special registration deputy. We're going to go into this more in detail in a little bit, but please remember that from here on out, with each voter you register, you'll need to be checking proof of address. Special registration deputies can register voters when registration is considered open. Registration closes at 5 p.m. the third Wednesday before Election Day. So it's imperative that all registrations taken by SRDs are submitted either in person to the city clerk's office on that day or postmarked that day, because registrations received after 5 p.m. cannot be on the poll list.
Now let's run through the voter registration form. These forms are available through a link on our website, or you can pick them up in the city clerk's office, or you can get them at the Government Accountability Board's website at gab.wi.gov. The form number is GAB 131. The 131 voter registration form is broken down into 12 separate sections, plus an administration section at the very bottom of the form. In Section 1, the registrant selects the reason for filling out the form. They're going to be a new Wisconsin voter, have had a name change, or are registering a Wisconsin address change. Anyone who has been made inactive through the 4-year maintenance cycle will select new Wisconsin voter. The registrant then indicates their municipality that they reside in. Now remember, they must live in the municipality that you've been appointed as an SRD. So if you're appointed in the City of Beloit and not the town of Turtle, and the voter selects the town of Turtle, then that voter should register with the Turtle Town Clerk or an SRD registered to register voters in Turtle. In Section 2, the elector must provide an identification number and related expiration date if they've been issued one. So this is key. If you've ever been issued a Wisconsin ID or a driver's license, even if it's expired, you must provide that number up there in order for us to get a complete match when we run it through the system. If the identification number is revoked, suspended, or expired, you should request the number, but the elector doesn't have to provide it. They would put their social in there, and you would mark that it's revoked, suspended, or expired. Remember, this does not require visual confirmation by the election inspector or the SRD. And the elector, if they know it by heart, they can recite the number on the form without presenting it. Another note would be out-of-state driver's license. If they're a new Wisconsin voter coming in from Illinois, we don't want the Illinois driver's license. It's just Wisconsin driver's license or state ID. All others would use their 4-digit social. Remember, an elector cannot be required to show his or her driver's license or social security card as a condition of registration.
In Section 3, the registrant must provide the last name, first name, and middle name if they have one, as it appears on the document provided in the Section 2. That would be their driver's license, state ID number, or their social security card. This is important because when the registration is entered into the statewide voter registration system, a confirmation check runs the name, date of birth, and the number to verify the identity with the Department of Transportation and Vital Records to assure the information provided exists and is correct. Also, a post office box cannot be listed as the residence address. You can't live in a P.O. box. The voter can list the P.O. box address as the mailing address, but the physical address of the voter is necessary in this section. Finally, the date of birth on the form is often our biggest area of mistake. Voters will sometimes put the month and the day followed by the current year, or they'll leave it completely blank, or accidentally put today's date. Please make sure that you're watching this box to get accurate information from the voter. You'll notice that the form also asks for mailing address, email, and phone. If there is no mailing address different from the address the voter is registering at, they can leave it blank. Also, the voter is not required to add their email or phone number, but if a problem comes up regarding their registration, we like to reach out and get it corrected before the next election. This contact information expedites that contact. Getting married isn't the only time someone changes their name, but it's probably the most common. If the registrant has made a name change since the last election, they need to submit a complete GAB 131. The Government Accountability Board considers a name change effective when the voter updates their name with the Department of Transportation on the state driver's license or state ID, or with the Social Security Administration. I will repeat the need to register the name change on the form in Section 6 by listing the same name that they registered with the DOT or Social Security Administration. This will help us get that complete match that I mentioned earlier.
Section 7 is required for voters registering a name change or address change. It is not required for new Wisconsin voters registering for the first time. The voter needs to complete their previous address where they were last registered to vote. And it's often hard for voters to remember the exact street address, but ask them to do their best and list as much information as they can. This will help us keep the statewide voter registration system clean by linking the voter's past registration history to their new voting address. This also might be a good time to address the students at Beloit College who move from dorm to dorm or on-campus to off-campus housing. These moves do require the voter to complete a new voter registration form and provide proof of residence at the new address, and may pose challenging for you. When unusual circumstances occur, please contact the Beloit City Clerk's office or the Government Accountability Board for direction in resolving the issue at hand.
Voters who do not have a traditional address can draw a diagram in Section 8 to indicate where they intend to return each day. An example of this might be a qualified homeless voter. Voters who use this area to indicate their address are still required to provide proof of residence. You'll also notice a spot where voters can indicate the need for special accommodation and a checkbox if the voter is interested in working at the polls. Registrants must be able to truthfully answer yes to both questions in Section 9 or they're not eligible to register to vote. I've always found it a good practice to ask these questions before beginning the process, knowing they'll need to confirm this on the form when they get to this section. Section 10 is the fine print not to be dismissed. By signing this registration with their signature, the voter is acknowledging that they, the voter, is a qualified elector, has lived at the address listed for at least 28 days preceding this election, and is not currently disqualified to vote by reason of felony status, incompetency, they haven't placed a bet or wager on the outcome of this election, and that they are currently not registered in another jurisdiction where they have or intend to vote. Note that this certification by the voter testifies that the form is truthful and that providing false information is a crime punishable by fine or imprisonment under state and federal law. Once the form is complete, the voter signs and dates the registration in your presence. If the voter is unable to sign the form and needs assistance doing so, that person then signs and gives their address in Section 12. Even though you, the special registration deputy, may be helping the registrant navigate the form, you're not assisting unless you help them sign the form. Now it's your responsibility to check the proof of address, also referred to as proof of residence or POR. This is a critical portion of your training and is a top priority for being allowed to register voters in the City of Beloit. The clerk cannot process any GAB 131 that does not properly list acceptable POR and the issuing identity. Voters may provide you their proof of address in a paper form or an electronic form. If they provide the documentation electronically, the special registration deputy should not handle the electronic device. It's up to the voter to display the POR and increase the sizing if needed. The special registration deputy does not have to retain the proof of address with the registration form, and the documents considered acceptable by the GAB are specified by state statute. If you're registering a voter and they don't have proof of residence on them to provide you, they can take the form with them and mail it with a photocopy of their POR to the clerk's office. And of course, voters can always come see us at the clerk's office to complete their registration.
So let's run through the acceptable documents that can be used as proof of address. I ask you to use caution in not confusing proof of where you live, proof of address, with proof of who you are, using that ID number up at the top of their form. The voter can use the number on their ID to register as a voter, but in order to use it as proof of address, it must be current and valid. And remember, you don't need to retain these documents. The voter will just show you their proof. You'll record the necessary information in Section 11 and return the document to the voter. The most common document is the current and valid Wisconsin driver's license or state ID card. So remember, this means that if it's going to be used as proof of where they live, it is not expired, not suspended, or not revoked. If you use the voter's valid and current driver's license or ID card, it must show the full name and address that the voter is registering with you. So be careful not to confuse proof of where you live, proof of address, with proof of who you are, the number at the top of the form.
The current practice with the Department of Transportation on state driver's license or state ID cards says that the person just registers an address change within 10 days into the state's computer system, and the ID holder does not receive a replacement ID until it expires or until the holder pays for a replacement. So quite often, another form of proof of address is necessary. A voter could also use a utility bill issued within the last 90 days. A utility bill can be a water, gas, electric, phone, landline or cellular, cable, or internet bill. Registrants can also use a bank or credit union statement, a paycheck or paycheck stub, or a real estate tax bill or real estate receipt for the current or previous year. If the voter is registering with you in person, they can use a residential lease as long as it is effective on Election Day. However, a residential lease is not an acceptable form of proof of address if they're going to register by mail. For voters who are attending a private college, they could show a paid college fee statement issued within the last 9 months when presented in combination with their student ID card. The student ID may not show the local address, but the college fee statement would. And then in the broadest category, any government-issued check or document. There are hundreds of government documents that would work for providing POR, but let's look at some of the most common ones we see. An unexpired fishing license, hunting license, or concealed weapons permit would work. A court summons, a ticket or citation, or a bicycle license registration would work. Any statement, check, or letter from Social Security, Social Security Disability, Food Share Wisconsin, document from Medicare, Medicaid, or Wisconsin Works, W-2, or a statement, check, or letter from Badger Care, Senior Care, or unemployment. The voter could use a bartender or license or operator's license to prove proof of address. They could use a solicitor's permit or an automobile registration. Of course, the document needs to list the full name and address of the voter to qualify and needs to be current and valid at the time they're presenting it. They could also use school records as a government document. Young adults who may have trouble finding current documents may use a public high school transcript, report card, or class schedule. They could also use a document from any UW campus or technical college to provide proof of residence. Voters could also use, as a government document, any correspondence from a federally recognized Native American tribe living in Wisconsin. There are documents that are not acceptable to be used as proof of address, and we see them quite often. According to state statutes, we cannot use insurance statements, medical bills, a business card, magazine subscriptions, expired driver's license or IDs, out-of-state driver's licenses, personal mail addressed to the voter, or those post office stickers that go on the forwarding stickers that go on the front of mail. These are all not acceptable forms of proof of address. And finally, you might encounter registering some homeless people, and they can prove their address through an affidavit from a homeless shelter. They can use an affidavit from a public or private social service agency on their letterhead that is providing services to that homeless person. It needs to identify the voter and describe where that voter is returning every day. It could be a landmark in the city of Beloit. It could be the intersection of a couple of streets. It could be a shelter where they are currently residing. This can prove difficult, but an affidavit will work for homeless voters. As a special registration deputy, you are required to document what type of proof was shown to you to verify the proof of address for this voter. There isn't much room in the form in Section 12, and the box can often go unnoticed, but this is required, and you may use these codes followed by the name of the agency that issued the document. This is a list that you should carry with you at all times when registering voters in the City of Beloit. This is what your document should look like when listing a code and the name of the agency issuing the document. The clerk's office is now required to enter this information into the statewide voter registration system, so the key here is to write neatly and completely. You may need to record at the bottom of the form or in the margin because there isn't much room in this box, but we must have this documentation in order to complete the registration entry. If the document has an account or identifying number, the Special Registration Deputy is required to record it. Note that not all forms of proof of residence have an identifying number. If the identifying number has more than 6 digits, list the last 4 of the number. If the identifying document has 6 or fewer digits, list the last 2 digits of the number. So more than 6, record 4. 6 or fewer, record 2. If you can kind of put the rhyme in your head, it's helpful. More, 4, and few, 2. So more than 6, record 4. 6 or fewer, record 2. At the very bottom of the form, there is a place for the official signature. You are the official, so it must be signed by you. Next to your signature, print your name and record your SRD number. You will receive the Special Registration Deputy number from the clerk's office. Some of the information on the registration form is considered confidential by GAB administrative rule, and the SRD cannot retain any of the confidential information. The confidential sections are driver's license, the state ID number, social security number, the date of birth, and any accommodation requests such as wheelchair or assistance, anything that's listed in there. As an extension of the City of Beloit Clerk's Office, the SRD is expected to keep confidential information confidential. Special Registration Deputies should not keep copies of registrations for their personal use, and if it is discovered that information obtained through registering voters is being used for any other fashion, you will be immediately terminated as an SRD with the city and will not be allowed to reapply in future terms. As we wrap up, I'd like to remind everyone of the expectations for conduct as a Special Registration Deputy. When working with the public, you'll need to be patient and use common sense, kindness, and courtesy. Remember that all voters deserve courteous attention in exercising their right as citizens. If you assist the voter with filling out the registration form, you cannot sign the form on their behalf. Be considerate of the extra time it might take for the person with a disability or an elderly person to complete the form. Give unhurried attention to a person who has difficulty speaking, and speak directly to the person who has a disability rather than just to a companion who may be accompanying him or her. Speak calmly, slowly, and directly to the person who is hard of hearing. You may want to have a notebook handy so that you can easily communicate with people who you're having difficulty to. And other considerations is that voter registration forms are available in English, Spanish, and Hmong formats. And a registrant's inability to speak perfect English does not in any way disqualify them from registering to vote. So, in summary, remember that the voter registrations you turn in have to be entered into the state voter registration system so that their names can appear on the poll list for the next election. SRD should verify that all the forms have been properly completed, signed, dated, include the required proof of residence information, and the SRD printed, signed, and SRD number. SRD's timely delivery of registrations is going to be critical to the municipal clerk properly having the time to get this entered and get their names on the poll book. And of course, failure to adhere to these requirements will result in the revocation of an SRD appointment. Now that you've completed your training, it's important to understand the reasons why I, as the city clerk, may revoke your SRD appointment. My biggest rule will be in the area of properly submitted registrations. If I receive 3 incomplete or poorly completed forms from you, you will receive a warning from my office that you are on probation. At 6 incomplete or poorly completed forms, you will be revoked for the remainder of this appointment cycle. The trust of Wisconsin voters is critical, and if we tell them that they are being registered, yet they fail to appear on the poll list because we didn't do our jobs, then we have not served them well, and that is not acceptable to the Beloit City Clerk's office. This concludes your special registration deputy training. Now the final step is to complete the City of Beloit Special Registration Deputy Certification Form and submit it to the clerk's office either in person, by postal mail, or via email, and then you can expect to receive your SRD packet in the mail within 7 to 10 days. The City Clerk's office exists to assist. So if you have questions about this training, or while you're out there registering voters, you have a question, please don't hesitate to give us a call, send us an email, or refer to our website for further information. Thank you.